So I want to welcome everyone to our very first Now You Know. We're very clever with our titles. And we were sitting in a staff meeting and said, hey, there's a lot of people that might be interested in XYZ. And um, uh, we started thinking of all the things that we could offer as a professional development opportunity. So Gilda uh, Austin, my new program specialist, re she volunteered. I'm sure you agree that do you see me winking? She volunteered to do this session on note-taking skills. And um, we this was something we did at New Teacher, and then we just a little bit of it. And then she was asked by one of the Rad Tech instructors who was at New Teacher to come and present to all of Metro Tech's adult students. And so that's kind of what got us to hey, well, if they enjoyed it, maybe other people could use it as well. So that's why we decided to offer this training, and we're going to save the recording and put it on our YouTube page. And so for those of you who have not met Gilda before, she comes to us and brings us these skills from a background with junior high science. And so I figure if she can teach junior high science kids how to take notes and how to study, then it should be super easy for the rest of us, right? So I don't think she's not super formal. So if you have questions as we go along, I bet she's fine with you doing that. So I'm just going to turn it over to Gilda. Thanks so much for doing this.
All right. Hi guys. So like Laura said, I'm Gilda Austin, and I'm going to try to share my screen real quick so you can kind of see what I'm going to be showing you. So should be able to see it now. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you can just kind of look at that for right now. So like she said, this is our Now You Know little webinars that we're going to be doing. If you weren't here, my voice sounds really great because I have really terrible allergies, and I went to Guyman yesterday, which just made my life a little bit more difficult. So I wanted to go over some of the things that I went over at New Teacher and at Metro Tech about note-taking skills, because I know a lot of our students have a hard time learning how to take like useful notes. A lot of times I have teachers come up to me and they tell me, well, my students kind of want to just write down everything that I say. They don't know how to pick out what's the important information. And to that, I say, you have to teach them how to figure that out because they don't know how to do that. Anytime that I was teaching, especially 8th grade science, the last semester that I was in the classroom, it was a lot of, well, they should know how to do this, but just because they should doesn't mean that they do. And if you take the time to teach them how to do these things, it'll make your life so much easier, and it'll make it to where they have that skill in the future. So I have, this is a little bit different format that I have. So the reason I have it like this, and it's not like fancy like presentation, is because I use these to print out and give to my students. So this is your normal Cornell notes. Most of the people that I have talked to and most students have been exposed to the Cornell style of taking notes. A lot of people, if they're in higher ed, this is kind of what they use. A lot of teachers that I worked with, this is what they would introduce to their students. A big thing that I saw whenever I was talking to other teachers, whenever they were teaching note-taking skills, is that they would give this to their students. And then they're like, okay, take notes over, whatever lecture I'm having right now. Well, if you give this to a student, they don't know what your main idea is. They don't know what the most important things are. They don't know what headings and topics need to be written down. You know the content because you're the one teaching it to them. So whenever I introduced Cornell notes, especially to 8th and 9th graders, it was, I pulled out the things that I wanted to be in the Q column, and then they had to come up with the notes column. And as my year progressed, I would stop providing this information so that they could, pick out what's the most important things. But in the very beginning, when I started school, I always had these already pre-filled out for them, or I would write them on the board and be like, these are the important things we're going to be going over. As you're listening to lecture, make sure that you take notes over those specific things. Anything that you think is important, add it here. Like, this is just an outline. It's not, we don't have to live or die by this. This is to be helpful to you. The other thing that I think is incredibly important to teach your students is the summary part. And a lot of times, whenever I was going over notes with my students, they thought that a summary meant whatever was at the end of a chapter. And I'm like, no, that's just their conclusion of what they taught you if you were reading something. Or if I go over at the very end and I have like a conclusion slide saying we hit these topics, that's not your summary. Your summary needs to be in your own words. So that's the biggest thing that I made sure to go over with my students, is that they have to do this in their own words. Because again, if you hand them a piece of paper, or tell them, if you draw this on your board and you're like, this is Cornell notes, this column is the Q column, this is where you write your notes, this is your summary, and you say, go forth and conquer, they're not going to be able to do that. It's going to be very overwhelming for them. Cornell notes is really nice for people that are analytical. So I am very much this mindset. This makes sense to me. I can pick out, topics, I can pick out what's important, and I can write down the notes that I think are going to help me remember those things. I'm good at writing summaries to decide what is the important things. And you're going to have a lot of students that is not how they think. I had a lot of students that are very artistic, and they could draw me things that I couldn't even begin to even explain to you because they're so talented. But this style of note taking was not going to be their forte. They were not going to be able to do this, and this was not going to help them remember anything. So the other thing that I did with my students is I did not force them to stick to a specific style of note taking. I would introduce different styles, and I'll show you a couple of the other things that we used in the classroom. But I would not hold whatever notebook style you want because it works for you and impose it on all of your students, because not all of them are going to learn the same way that you do. So that is a little bit about Cornell Notes. And this is the template that I have saved, and I can share this out to everyone so that you guys can make a copy of it, and you can print it out if you want to use it, or like share it with your students if they want to make copies of it to use for their own personal note-taking skills. Another really great strategy that we use, and we've actually gone out to teacher visits and seen some of our teachers do this in their classes, is the 3-2-1 strategy. So I just start with 3 things that you learn. So at the end of a lesson, or just if you're at the end of a topic, if you're taking, like before you take a break, you can just have them write down, what are 3 things that you learned over this specific topic? What are 2 questions you still have? And what's thing that you enjoyed learning about? If they can link it to something that they like, these things are going to be solidified in their brain as well, because now they're intrigued. You got them hooked. It's because they had to find something that was interesting to them. And so now it's going to make the rest of it make more sense. Again, this is a really great exit ticket. And even just at the end of your day, if you just have them have a notebook, just pull it out and be like, hey, I want you to do this before you leave. It's also a good reflection tool for them. So if you've covered a lot of content, they can go back and be like, oh, what did we talk about today? Because, sometimes if you're going through a lecture and you're going like super quick and you're just like trying to push so that you can get all of your information out to them, they haven't had like even a second to process. So this gives them that moment to process the information that you're going over with them. So a couple of other ones that we have are, this one I think is kind of fun. It's like to rear view, if you see it's a rear view mirror. So in the little circle part, you write down things that you already know about a topic. And then here, after you've done lecture, these are new facts or words that you learned about. I was a biology teacher, so this was really helpful, especially when you're introducing new terms and topics. So if you just have them make like a word dump of things that they know about the topic before you even get started, you also have an idea as an instructor where their starting point is. So maybe you get to go a little bit deeper on some subjects that you probably maybe didn't know you could go a little bit deeper on. Anytime I have them write things down like this, like what do you already know, I also have them share them out to the class so that you get that feedback immediately, and you're not waiting until like the end of class, you're picking these up and you're like, oh, we already knew all of this. And I just spent, 15, 20 minutes of my class period going over something they already understand. Instead of, being able to take that next layer or go a little bit deeper in your topic or your content. This is just another way, especially with vocab. I know a lot of our teachers, like if you're doing med term, things like that, if you have your word here, do a drawing, which was always hard for me because I'm not artistic, but doing things like this also makes your brain think in a different way. So if you had to be challenged to actually draw something that is going to be descriptive of the word that you learned, it'll make you remember it a little bit better. And then you also describe the application of that word. So this is, again, their own words, their own depictions, so that it helps them in the long run remember that word. The reason I like to do them this way is because I like boxes and I like them to be like streamlined. Again, some of your students aren't going to like that. They're going to want to be a little messy. Don't let whatever you feel comfortable with stop them from expressing themselves and making it. Whatever's going to help them is ultimately the goal. You can show them the different strategies and introduce them one at a time. But at the end of the day, it's going to be whatever works for them. It's not necessarily whatever is easiest for you, because they're the ones that are going to be using these notes in the long run in order to study and go back and prove to you that they've learned the material. So things like this are really fun for them. At first, especially when I was teaching 8th and 9th graders, you get a little bit of pushback because they're like, well, I don't know what to draw here. I don't know what drawing you want me to do. And I always tell them, listen, I'm a science person. So if you label everything, even if they're stick figures, I'm fine with it. Like whatever works. If it helps you remember it, that's what I care about. You don't have to be the next Picasso and show me like, how artistic you can be. So there's another little strategy. And again, I can send all of these to you guys so you guys can see. Graphic organizers, again, this is the very analytical mind. This is for those students that work this way. I did a lot of discussions in my classroom. So I always wrote the topic we're going to go over on the board, or if I gave them like a pre-reading assignment, things like that. So before we ever start, just do a word dump. Tell me everything that you know about whatever we're about to go over. And I always use timers. It's funny, I was telling them I just found my timers in my little box from when I was teaching. And I always use timers so that whole time they are down and they are, just writing away because they know there's a time limit and that buzzer is going to go off and we're going to move on to the next part. And so in the middle here, they just write down their notes that they take during the lecture. And then this is the important part. This is what I always emphasize to my student. After lecture, summarize your information. Tell me what you learned. What did you know before that you were surprised by when you were in lecture? What is something, maybe a misconception that you had about the topic? What is something you thought you knew about it that after, sitting through class, you're like, oh, I was really wrong about that. You would be surprised about some of the conversations you can have by having them go back and read over their notes. And teaching them this skill is really imperative whenever you're teaching them how to do notes. So even if you, at the beginning of, your school year, you start with the next day, if you've done a graphic organizer, if you've taken notes, just be like, hey, let's go ahead and do our summary right now before we start so we can go over the rest of our information for the day. So that way they've already even slept on it. So they've already had time to process and they don't have to do the summary immediately. And now they're having to go back and think and pull that information from the previous lesson. Because sometimes if you do everything at the same time, you're like at the end of class, okay, I'm going to write all the summaries that I have, and you're not really taking the time to process it very well. You're just writing down almost verbatim what you wrote in your notes, and your notes and your summary end up looking the exact same. So if you let them have some time in between that, so that their summary is truly a reflection of what they grasped, it also helps you, I never graded their notes, but I would look over them and I could see if they kept a notebook or things like that, I would go back and be like, oh, so you didn't write a reflection here, or I don't feel like you understood what we went over. So do you have questions? And then that can prompt a conversation between you and your students. And then you can go back and we had to reteach our entire class because, I'm in Common Ed. So we would go back and go over things that the students maybe didn't understand. And this kind of gave me a way to have a starting point for the following day. This is fun, just because my eighth graders thought it was hilarious because of the acronym. Yes, it's CUSS. And this helps them even, it's great for when you're reading things like articles and things like that, but it works really well to go back over their notes. So if you have that student that you can't break out of, writing verbatim everything that you say, they need to do something like this. They need to have like a little legend of what each thing represents. So this one's just easy to remember. So you're going to circle the keywords, underline the main ideas, star the most important details, and summarize in your own words what you learned. So again, with the majority of any of the note-taking strategies, the summary at the end is going to be the biggest things you can take away from it. I was not a great note taker when I was in school because in high school things came simple to me and I just understood what I needed to know. When I went to college and things got really, really hard, I was one of those students that had to write down literally everything my teacher said, to the point where I would like record their lecture and then go back and listen to it and make sure that I hadn't missed anything when I was taking notes. This was incredibly helpful to me after that, because having just a bunch of words doesn't help you if you haven't even taken the time to process them. Going back and looking at your notes and being able to have a legend so that you know what is the most important thing. So, if we're in college, your professors kind of went on tangents and you were like, okay, well, that probably wasn't important to my life. I don't really think I need to know any of those things. So this is really helpful, again, for those students that, might be struggling with just writing down verbatim what you say until you can kind of get them into a little bit of a groove where they can write down the most important things and not have to write down exactly what you say. But I'm telling you, I was a type A student and I was like, I don't want to miss a single thing that my teacher says that could be on my test because I want to get a good grade. So that's where that came in. So this was really helpful for that type of student. So these are just kind of websites that I got this information from. I was going to let you know that on CTU, which I know we all love it. It's a lot of scrolling, but it's getting better. Susie's working on it, I promise. If you go to health teacher resources, we have under classroom applications, note-taking stuff. And so I pulled out some of the ones that I also shared at Metro Tech. One of them is kind of going over Cornell Notes, and it kind of shows you how you can use it. So I like to show you the kind of like the end result. So the big thing that I took away from them that was really helpful, if you're going to share this with your students, is the 5 R's of note taking. So like the record, reduce, recite, reflect, and review. Again, summary, review, all of that is, I'm going to say it until I'm probably blue in the face. It's the most important part of note taking. And if you talk to any student, like when I was talking to the students of Metro Tech, they were great at being in class, being engaged, taking notes. And then I asked them, how many of you go home and read your notes after the fact? Or have you gone home and read your notes after the fact? And they just look at me like I was crazy. I'm like, they're like, what? That is a crazy idea. Why would we do that? I'm like, because sitting there, you're like high stress, write down everything you can possibly write down, and you don't have any time to process. They don't understand that their brain needs that lapse to go back and go over things before they can summarize. And then that's really what's going to solidify it in their memory. And they're not just regurgitating information, they're actually learning it. So the review is just a big part of that. So this is just another template that's out there. That's the Cornell Notes. And again, in the like their note-taking area, they can use whatever they want. They want to do pictures, let them do pictures. They want to do like, again, like I just did words and I was very analytical in how I took notes. And so it was just writing. But like I said, having that, if you have a legend or things like that. So I was a big highlighter kid. So I always had like on the side of my notes, I would have like the different colors that I used for those different things. And I would make sure that I knew what each color represented in my notes. So that even if I just wrote a bunch of words in the notes column and not pictures, I could go back and highlight and I knew what was important and what wasn't. So this is just what those notes look like. I'm gonna have to take a drink before I die. And then this one was really cool, and it's not something that I would have done because I can't draw things. And so I would be very self-conscious, I think, whenever it comes to this. But doing like word association, so this is for midterm. And this is kind of what they did. So you have abduction. So there's a person abducting a child. Sorry. And having them draw things that maybe don't mean exactly what that word is, but it's going to help them remember what it means, is really, really helpful. And when I showed this to some of those students at Metro Tech, they were like, whoa, I didn't even think or realize that I could do that. And that was really helpful to them, to figure out what would work for them and what doesn't work for them. And like I'm telling you, those kids that are artistic, stuff like this really vibes with them. It helps them understand things, especially because sometimes your artistic kids have a little bit of a harder time with the analytical thing that is science and conceptualizing it. So if they can draw it and make it a little bit different, it helps them remember things. So if they can do something like this, it's really helpful. This was really funny, the supine one with the soup. So, and just, they're all really great, like just little things that you don't think about, like, oh, this is note taking. And a lot of times I think in the past we thought, if you were drawing and doodling and stuff like that, you weren't really learning or processing. And now we know that that's not the case. So like I'm telling you, I had a student that all she did my entire class period was have a little like arts pad. And so she just drew the entire time and just sat there. And I thought she hadn't heard a word I said or like did or knew a single thing that I had taught. And then I would give her a test and she got 100% every time, like quizzes, test, everything. And I talked to her one time and she was like, well, this is how I process. Like if I can be drawing or doodling or things like that, I can listen to you and it sticks in my head. I was like, that would never work for me, but I'm glad that it works for you. I was like, now let's work on turning in our homework. That was the tough part. So that's another thing. And this, again, these are activities that are in our CTU. The bubbles are really great. So you start with the instructions, you have your four bubbles, and then you kind of want to connect them to the end. So they have to do kind of like some wordplay with this. So in the first bubble, you just write the term, and at the end, you have the definition. And then how do you go from this term to that definition? So things that are like that for your wordy kids. So things are going to be a little bit more helpful. I'm just trying to give you more ideas to hit all of your students so that if you do this, a lot of these things, if you start doing them together as a class, and then you'll find the kids that it'll stick with. So everybody can try it once. Like, so if you're doing a new topic, you can be like, okay, we're going to do this note-taking strategy for this. If it doesn't work for you, you don't have to ever use it again, but we're going to try it together. Just so that they're introduced to different styles of note taking, like even like the drawing thing. Like I'm telling you, I would have been that kid that'd be like, I don't want to do this, but I always did it at least the one time that my teacher asked. And I'm like, okay, we'll try this the once. I'm like, I know it won't work for me, but we can give it the good old college try.
Gilda, can you give us an example of how those four bubbles would work? I know I don't see a sample that they have.
No.
You're probably going, oh, great, you picked the one thing I don't want to. I'm just curious how it works.
Yeah, no, well, I know I gotta find a term.
Do you need like a med term?
I mean, just any term, I guess. Hang on.
Word.
Just a word.
No, how about the word word?
The word. So you would start with word here, and then we would end with the definition here. So you would start those together as a class because we know the word. And usually if you give them definitions, you have your definition of whatever you're giving them. So, and then in here, you would be like something that describes a thing or an object, or like a name. A name is also a word, things like that. So you would just, this is good for like to get them engaged. So then they could say different things as how do you go from here to the end.
So it's kind of like the 6 degrees of separate, 7 degrees, whatever.
Yeah.
For Kevin Bacon, right? It's to get from here to here. What do you have to do to get there? Okay.
Yeah.
So I can see that. Okay. I see lots of adult instructors that are in here. And like I can see if you gave them a concept like hydration, and then the definition over here, and then what are all the different things that make them get from or how do those things link? It's the digestive system, the what do you call it, endocrine, or not endocrine, electrolyte balance. You know what I'm saying? Is that kind of what you're talking about? All the different things that would connect one
Mm-hmm.
to another, kind of.
Yeah, it's just how they can jump from this to the end product. That'll help them remember it. So yeah, so I think with those concepts, it would also work if you're introducing something new and how are they interconnected. This will like link them together on how to do that. But again, this one is really a lot of the note-taking strategies. People think of this just it's just them writing stuff down while I'm talking. If you have a discussion, that is also going to drive your classroom and it's going to help them understand things. So if they can talk to each other about the concepts, it's going to be so much more helpful and it's going to mean more to them than just writing down verbatim what you're saying. Then the other one, this one I think is really fun. It's a headliner. I had a hard time, again, picking out what's important, right? So here, like you start with the summary. So if you went over a topic, you write down 6 different things that you learned in there. And then of those 6 different things, what are the 3 that are the most important? And of those 3, which one is the headline of that topic? This helps them break it down to where, and again, this is really great in like a group. So everybody fills out their own 6 and then they compare and share and they can see which ones were redundant. So which ones did they all have? And then those 3 go there. Again, I'm going to take a drink here. And then that way, as a class or as a group, they can come up with what's the main idea of that topic or that article that you gave them or anything like that. So I thought this one was really, really fun. Sorry. So those are some of the different strategies. I was going to share with you now that we're doing teacher visits. We have some teacher spotlights, and Blake Lynn Geiger from Durant, Laura went and saw her, has a, oh, sorry, it's over here. So she has them do an interactive notebook, and I have seen this in a lot of different classrooms, the notebooks, to have them in one spot. You can use either like a spiral notebook or a 3-ring binder, whatever works for your students, and have them like divide out, like if they're going to have med term, things like that, have a tab for all of those. But in their notes section, Blake Lynn, what she would do is she has them, sometimes she has these little handouts and sometimes it's just whatever topic they're going over, and it'll go on the left side of the page. And then on the right side is the important part, which is the student output section. So again, if you've gone over some of these note-taking strategies, that student output section can be whatever works for them. So they've already taken the physical notes, the things that you know they have to have. They have to know the definition of these terms. They have to have these specific topics, these ideas. They have to know those things. But how they interpret them is what's going to help them remember these things. So that's a really neat way of doing, I think, a note-taking skill, and just doing it in the interactive notebook. So I wanted to share that with you guys. No, I keep coughing. Sorry. So that you're taking all of it and putting it together, and you're keeping it in one spot for your students, because here's the other thing that they don't know how to do, how to be organized. They don't know how to do it. Like, it doesn't matter whether they're 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th graders, if they're adults. Like, I don't know if you've met me, but I have a lot of calendars, like multiples of calendars, and I feel like I'm an organized person, and still sometimes I lose things. So organizational skills are things that we think that by the time they get to us, like if they're in a tech center, they've been at least in high school or through high school, if we think that they have done these things, that they have these life skills. If they don't have them, teach them. That's the only thing I can tell you. If you continue to think that they should know by now, your life is going to be really, really difficult as an educator. If they don't know how to do something, find a way to teach them. And then once you teach them, they have the skill and they can use it for the rest of their life. It's not just going to apply to you if they're going to continue to do classes, especially like European students, things like that. They're going to be in school for a little bit. So And then when they go be nurses, they have to be organized. And you work in a hospital, you have to document things, you have to know where things are. So these are just life skills that they're going to have. It's not enough to say they should know by now. You teach adults, elementary, anybody, yes, they probably should know by now, but they don't. And you're their teacher, teach them. So another fun thing that I thought, if you're teaching any kind of terminology, this is just a fun way to get them engaged. So this is from Shannon Gilbert. She does medical crocs. So then she puts like their definitions here in the little sole, and then she has them do like the little widgets that you can buy for your crocs. I don't own crocs, so I don't know any of this. Our Emily does. She has all the crocs with all the fun little things, and I've seen them for my daughter, and I'm like, those look fun. Let's get all the Mickey Mouse things. So this is something that is really popular right now. So things that are happening right now are helpful to them because it sticks with them because it's what they know right now. So this is helpful to them. And like you see here, they don't even have to draw it. They can pick it out, that an image that's already made for them like this. I would love this because I don't have to draw this thing. I can find something that represents it. And in my head, it makes sense. And then I can put it on here. And it also takes away the pressure of, I have to draw something and it's now going to be judged kind of thing. So there's those. And then this is just another teacher spotlight that we did on Miss Tessa, and she did a relay race. So if you can get them moving, they're going to learn stuff. So she did their skills check, and she did a whole relay race where they had like proper posture when they were sitting, how to stand up properly, and they went around and they picked up a little tub and they had to push it across the floor and pick it up and carry it properly and then set it down properly. So just little things like that that you don't think about. They have to know those things, and you can even do like a test over those things, but they had to physically do them. It's going to help them remember. I think a lot of times people think that if you're just doing notes, you're like, okay, well, you're going to write everything down. No, if you get them up and moving, and if like, okay, especially if you're teaching anatomy and physiology and how things move, if you make them move their own arms in those ways using those words, it's going to make a world of difference for them on how to do that. So that is what I have on note-taking skills. I don't know if you guys have questions or comments on any of that.
Gilda, you talk about students being organized and prepared. I'm kind of curious. We do have, of the teachers I see on here, quite a few are adult instructors. Is that something that you all see a challenge with as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They cannot take notes, and we've been actually had to integrate one of our certified teachers to have them go down and visit with her how to do it. But one thing that got me is the cuss. Man, that is like really, really good, because a lot of them refuse to take a note and they just want to do it in their book. Well, holy heck, do that, and now you can circle it and underline it and star it. That right there for me spoke to me to share with students.
I think that one of the things about the interactive notebooks too, just a comment, they let them use their notebooks for their first test. Okay, so this is freaking you out a little bit. I know you're adult instructors and you're going, bah! But it also helps them learn to take really good notes, because then they're thinking, I might get to use this. And if I don't make it where I understand it, we all know that open book, well, I'm speaking for myself. Open book to me was always really difficult because I started second guessing myself and wanting to go look every single thing up instead of, okay, what are the things I know and the things I don't know, and just focus on what I don't know. I think it's really interesting though to consider maybe making it part of a what would you call it, a professional development grade or something like that, to just like wearing your scrubs and doing something else. I mean, if you're not taking notes or being organized, that is a life skill. I don't know. What do you, did anyone else? So Lois, I saw you on there, Lois McCullough.
Yes.
Are you still with us? Yeah. So you've taught in comprehensive schools as a science teacher and in career tech. So you're a lifelong teacher. What do you have to add to this?
I do the notebook. I call it their science journal,
Mhm.
and I have a science or some whatever has to do with the day's topic, a question. They have to write the date, they have to write the question down, and then they have to answer it. And then on Fridays, it's a weekly, I call it their essential question grade. And so they get a grade for filling out their notebook. So I can definitely add that one idea to what I've already got going. That was amazing.
So did you find that you taught at a private school?
Mhm.
I know. Did you have did kids mostly know how to do these things by the time they got to you?
Yeah, they did because even though it's a Christian school, they were college prep, I guess you could say. And so our middle school teachers were excellent at setting that foundation.
Yeah.
Now that I'm over here at Autry, that's a whole different ballgame.
So you see a lot of students that don't have that skill.
They don't have that skill. Nope, not at all. And
So
it seems like to me it's getting worse too, as you know,
Really?
18 years in this, I'm like, oh, this is getting worse.
do you think COVID has made it worse where they maybe everything was online and they could go back and listen to it again
Yeah.
or whatever?
I actually, for the first time this year, I had a student ask me, she goes, can I record your lecture? I've never had a student ask that before. And I was like, well, yeah, I guess if you want to, because like you said, during COVID, they were used to rewind, listen,
Yeah.
rewind, listen. So yeah, I hate to blame everything on COVID, but yeah, it's been a change since then.
Yeah. Well, I do think the learning styles, I do think it has changed a little. I mean, my own personal kids, I just, I can see that there's some deficiencies that definitely were brought to light. I guess that's the nicest way to say it. So Nikki, is this something? Oh, Chanda has something. Go ahead, Chanda.
So I don't do lecture because we're open entry, open exit, and I
Right.
have people in all different levels. But my thing is they cannot take notes out of the book. So I don't know how to teach them how to take notes out of the book to pull out what's important and what's not. And I can't teach them to, like they want to write the whole book out. And I'm like, that's not doing you any good. You need to make it where you can understand what you're reading. And I cannot get them to pull out the pieces they need.
Yeah, and that's where I scaffold that. So with any of my students, because we read a lot of things, we had a lot of articles, things like that. But the biggest thing is like if you introduce them to like the Cornell style, you show them this, or like, like just a graphic organizer, like what do you already know? What have you learned from this article? And what's something that surprised you? Just anything like that. But in the very beginning, they don't know. They can't do it, especially when it comes to reading things and then pulling out what's important. It's a skill that they haven't developed. So I always provided those things for them in the beginning. And then as time went on, as they kept doing it, then they would know, oh, these headings or these topics, or like whenever a paragraph changes, they start picking up on those little details, which are things that they don't realize because they're trying to read it as quickly as they can and get it done. It's not necessarily always about learning and retaining. They think, okay, I read it, I should know it. They don't understand that there's a process to that. You can't just, I used to tell my students, you can't just sleep on your book and, through like osmosis and diffusion, like accept, like it doesn't go into your brain like that. You have to apply it. So that's where having a strategy for them helps. But like I said, in the beginning, regardless of what age group you're teaching, if you go through the article or whatever, that chapter of the book with them to start with, then they'll be able to start doing it on their own. But if they're literally just writing down everything in this paragraph because they think all of this is important, they're going to keep doing that because they think that's what you want. Like I said, telling them, hey, you need to pick out the important things. If they haven't done it up to this point, they don't know what that is. So that's why I always start them with, because teachers all shapes and sizes have done this. I taught, like my department head was like, she's like, oh, I teach them Cornell notes. And she gave them like, this is a Cornell note. And that's it. So when I started with my students, I'm like, here's the important things. You give me the stuff. You give me what you think the notes should look like about this. It's not what the book says. It's not verbatim what it says. If it's a definition, I was kind of more lenient and more flexible with that. I'm like, okay, you can write for word what that definition is, especially if you don't understand it and you don't know it. You can't interpret it yet, but in your summary, all of that has to be your own words. And that will help them kind of pull out what they do and don't understand from those articles or from those chapters that
So
you're going over.
I'm curious, Chanda, do they have hard copy books or are they digital?
Our AMP book is hard copy.
Okay, I liked the skill that Gilda showed with the underlining. It's almost like diagramming sentences, you
Yes.
know, where you would underline the main topic, star something, circle something else. You know what I'm saying? It's one of the ones that's out on CTU, I believe. Is that correct, Gilda? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. Mhm.
So, but there, you know, and because that would be something that they could actually, and then you can transfer that over to, you know, note paper or something too. I'm just throwing out ideas. You guys tell me what would work. I don't know.
So they have a list of objectives, and then I'm like, if you do your objectives, then then you'll know the answer. But then because then if I have some that aren't doing well, I'm like, okay, I need you to turn in your objectives. Then I'm going to review them, and then I'm going to go over them and see what parts are you're missing. So then I will go and write, you need some more information on this, and that is just taking up way too much time for me. And I've got to figure out some other way because AMP is like the hardest, it just drags on, and everybody gets so frustrated with the notes and the objectives and trying to fill that all out, and then I get pages of notes and looking through it. It's
Chanda, what else do you do to besides book work? What other kinds of things? Like, have you ever seen Starla do her thing with clay? Have you ever because that's coming up in the boot camp we're having, and I'm just telling you, that kind of stuff makes a world of difference if you can mix it up where it's not just taking notes, but they're actually just like some people draw. In this situation, we would like be building what the layers of skin are and would be building what insertion and origin for the shoulder and all the different muscles and so on. But what I'm saying is we have a boot camp coming up in 2 weeks. It is not just for high school instructors boot camp. It's for anyone to come to, and we're going to have Starla Ewan there, and she's the one who developed the whole curriculum for anatomy and clay, and then she has her own thing too that's called hands-on body systems. So
I've got to find something else.
I mean, I really think that would help mix it up a little bit where Gilda, you've been through that training. Yes.
There's the skin.
That's cool.
One of my students made it.
That's a
And
really
then
good
it's
skin.
time. And then, then I'm looking at a calendar with, we have 3 days. So we've got 3 days to get this chapter done.
Right. Well, and again, some of it is maybe it depends on what are the things that are the most important things for them to actually build, and then what are things that they just need to know the function of how it works. That does make it difficult.
We do some labs like osmosis, and we do like the tongue testing thing, but we do. I don't know.
There's also a lot of stuff out on CTU about anatomy.
Okay. I'm going to get
tons and tons of stuff that's interactive that makes it more interesting, and you're still covering the same information that you would if they were looking through a chapter.
I know something that changed my students' perspective was something as simple as a color change. Like, they are in the Apple pen and pencil generation. And so if they'll take their notes on an iPad rather than taking them on pencil paper, then they can change things up and change those colors and categorize that way, and do their drawings as well. So they've got their hand-drawn notes in there as well as their doodles. It really made a difference for my kids.
Some of my students are using these clear Post-it notes,
Mhm.
and they're copying, putting it over the computer and then write and then copying like the models and things, and then they will put those in their notes. So that's helped some. So they have,
And that's exactly what the interactive notebook is.
okay,
And all of those things came off of Teachers Pay Teachers, I think. And they just the original teacher purchased the set and then downloaded it. And she has copies for her students that today, this is what, like if you're covering integumentary system, then these are the notes and stuff you need to know. And then as they go along through the chapter, it's going to list what are the three functions of the skin? And because it is in a more dynamic kind of learning style, or they're actually doing something with their hands, it seems to really stick.
and
So
what was that called? That notebook?
it's called the interactive notebook. And I can give you, I'll shoot you right now Blakeland's information on it, but it's available. You could go out and on Pinterest type in interactive notebook or anatomy and physiology interactive notebook, and you're going to get so much stuff. So just try it with like 1 or 2 chapters and see how that does.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I hate to stop the party, but if no one else has anything you want to add or concerns, go ahead, Gilda. Tell them what they won today, Gilda.
So I'm gonna send a form that you can fill out in the chat. And I have a thing that you can scan if you want to scan it. You're gonna get a little certificate that says that, it's not pulling up, but you're gonna get a certificate that says that you were here for an hour of PD with us. If you scan the little code or if you fill it out from the chat, I just sent it to you. So there's a link there for you to fill it out. You should get your little certificate immediately in your email. If you don't, you can shoot me an email and I will send you your certificate with your name on it. Make sure that in the name part you write your name exactly how you want it to be seen on the certificate. And because that's where it'll pull it from the form immediately and put it into your certificate when it emails it to you. But if you don't get it, you can shoot me an email and I'll send you one if you were here in person with us, which is awesome. I was going to do one little plug for our new Facebook page, so I'll send that to you guys in the chat also. So we have the new HCE Facebook page where, those little teacher spotlights that I did where they have like just any ideas or things that we run into when we're going to new teacher visits. And we want to share them with all of our teachers. So if you guys go and like and follow our page, you'll be able to see them there. And I will also be sending out a form that you can fill out. So if you have a teacher that you work with that you're like, oh, they're doing this in their classroom and I think it's really cool, and you want them to be spotlighted, you can fill out that form and I can reach out to that teacher and get the information I need from them so that we can put them on our Facebook page as well. Or if it's yourself, nominate yourself.
My scanning thing saying you need permission. I tried to scan the code. It says you need permission.
Okay, did you try the link in the chat? Is that maybe my...
Yes, I tried both ways, the scan and the link, and it's saying we need permission.
Let me fix it. I don't know what happened. Give me just a second.
I was all impressed. You have all this all done too. Look at you go.
Yeah, well, when I build them on the career tech thing, it makes it a verified thing.
Oh yeah, mine says verify it's you. Oops.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pulling up my goofy husband's email account, not mine.
Okay, now try it. If you refresh it, you should be able to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I forget that it has this restriction on it that says only people from our department, like our the state of Oklahoma can do it, and it
That worked.
good.
I think. Email's on there twice, sister. Oh no, we've got email your email and email your answer. Anyway,
I clicked another thing. Just put your email and it'll send it to you.
okay. You guys have any comments or anything that would make this better? You're not gonna hurt her feelers.
Yeah.
Just anything that we could work on. Add to. Nothing. Okay, well, I'll leave this up for a couple minutes so you guys can put your name in the chat and go ahead and get all that stuff taken care of. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you, Gilda, for putting all this together. I really appreciate
No problem.
it. Did she have a choice? She did not, but that's okay. So you guys all have a great afternoon, and if think about coming to boot camp, it's gonna be way fun.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks.
Did you get in, Mickey? Someone come help Mickey. Well, Miss Gilda, you did it. Okay, let me